Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone. I am Shreya Agrawal and you are watching the second dispatch in our series India Restart Meaningful Dialogues on India's Road to Recovery. The entire idea behind this discussion series is to really come up with some solutions and ideas on how the economy could be rebooted. We are looking at all kinds of ideas at a horizon of short term measures, medium term, and the long term. The approach that we have taken is to really bring new ideas, new lines of thinking on the table. Some of them could also be unconventional and also question the basic assumptions that we have worked with till now. As of now, the pandemic has caused a shock for the Indian economy. The four legs consumption, manufacturing, export, capital flows on which the Indian economy has been growing have all been impacted adversely. In fact, PM Modi's clarion call to industry leaders at CII was that he is confident of getting growth back. But according to a Reserve Bank of India survey, consumer sentiment is at a historic low, at least the lowest record in the last 6 years. There's worry about financial security, job security, private investment is anemic, and banks are still parking more than rupees 6 lakh crore with the RBI. How do we start to get the growth back and perhaps use the surplus for more constructive purposes? Amidst all this conversation about getting growth back, providing growth impetus, rather doubling down on SMEs, the sector which forms the backbone of the Indian economy, is highly crucial. Just to give you some context here, small and medium enterprises, popularly known as SMEs, are the backbone of the socio-economic development of our country. It also accounts for about 45% of total industrial production, 40% of total exports, and contributes very significantly to the GDP. Manufacturing segment in particular within the SME universe contributes to about 7% of our GDP. We have a pretty meaningful panel today and full of practitioners in the SME space. Please help me welcome Dinesh Agarwal, the founder of India Mart, India's largest SME marketplace, Nikhil Rajpal, CEO of Hero Electronics, part of the Hero Group, just ventured into new businesses, Vinod Sood, Managing Director India at Hughes Steel, also been elected to the NASCOM Engineering Council, and Vinod Charkan, Managing Director of Places Technologies, a software product firm, and they have banks such as JP Morgan and Wells Fargo as their client, and they've also worked very closely with the US government on the Paycheck Protection Program. Gentlemen, thank you for being part of the show. I do think it would be a good idea to perhaps understand and sort of take a stack on how do we fare against some of the other economies, especially when it comes to China, because that is the comparison which we often have for everything that we do, be it manufacturing, be it investment hub or startups. So let's have a more global view as to how do we compare on the SME world within the two economies and how has that economy has really sort of fueled the SME enterprises in their home ground. I do think that Vinod Charkan from Places and his team has done some research in this direction. Vinod, would you want to give us a brief snapshot of the same?
Thank you, Srija. And firstly, thank you for having me. Looking forward to this discussion with this esteemed panel. I think a few data points that I wanted to share to kick this off is, the reason it makes sense to compare India with China is not from a political standpoint, but it's from an economic standpoint. If we try to compare ourselves with the US, it's like trying to compare the journey of a poor man's son and a rich man's son, which is not going to be equal, right? So let's compare the journey of two poor man's children, because India and China were almost the same in 1990. And if you look at the SME sector specifically, in India, we've got about 63 million SMEs, and we're not far away from China. China has got about 73 million SMEs. Now, the difference actually is in the bank lending side of support for the SMEs. In India, the total bank lending to the SME sector is in the region of $60 billion only. And in China, the lending to the SME sector is in the region of $4.5 trillion, which is, to put it in perspective, 75 times more than the support you see in India for almost the same number of SMEs, right? So there is a foundational problem there. And I think from what we are seeing in the work that we do in the financial services space in the West compared to what we see in India, is there seems to be a fundamental disconnect in understanding the monetary system in terms of the fact that brand new money is created in the economy when a bank makes a loan, just a traditional loan. That's new money. There is no connection between bank deposits and bank loans. And there is no correlation between constructive lending and inflation. If you see, even in today's media news, the RBI is announcing that they are not going to be bringing down interest rates because they're seeing a spike in inflation. And that's very surprising to see, honestly, for us, because it is completely divergent to the views of the Western economies. And a couple of other data points I wanted to make is, if you look at the money supply, right? The money supply in China 30 years ago in 1990 was 280 billion. And today, just 30 years hence, the money supply in China is 28 trillion, which is 100 times more money created in their economy. And in India, we were 140 billion in 1990, and today we are 2.2 trillion, and we have only created 15 times more money. So I know it sounds a little contrarian when you talk about new money creation, but it is honestly the fact and the fuel that drives any economy, right? And if you actually look at the data, out of the money created in China, 96% of that is bank credit. So out of the 28 trillion, 96% of that is simply bank loans. In India, out of the 2.2 trillion, 86% is bank loans. And only the balance, 14%, is money created by the RBI as currency. So I think there is a lack of understanding on credit in India. There are two types of loans that can be created. One type of loan is what can be put into the category of being an inflationary loan, which is a loan that is provided for speculation in financial assets. So the best way to describe it is, if you take an example of a loan being given to an individual or a business to purchase existing real estate, which is an existing building, the money created to support that loan is inflationary, because by just transferring the ownership title of a building, you're not contributing to the GDP, right? So new money is created, no increases contributed to the products and services, so you have inflation. A non-inflationary loan, on the other hand, is working capital given to a business, because working capital given to a business directly results in the creation of new products and services, and so it offsets the new money created. I think that's a fundamental disconnect in understanding, because today we are penalizing small businesses with a lack of credit and high cost of capital, and almost beating up the small business because of our problems on the inflationary side. On the other hand, we should be going in the exact opposite direction, I feel. I feel the small business should be supported with extremely low interest loans for capital investments, literally like loans available at 1%. And the government and the RBI should support this. So I feel the need of the hour is very aggressive support by the government to the SME sector with low cost capital loans, and also just like the government announced in their stimulus program, getting more aggressive on guaranteeing those loans so the banks are not afraid to lend. So I think those are some data points I wanted to share in my opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinod. That was sort of very fairly and meaningfully put. I want to sort of come to you now, Dinesh. We have sort of all seen your journey, and you sort of really began this entire conversation about SMEs in India. And to sort of what Vinod just said right now, that there are two basic challenges which can fuel the SME growth. And he said about lower cost of capital and access to credit, which has actually happened in Western countries in a more structured fashion. I know sort of you have this large SME marketplace and you have frequent interactions with them. Can you perhaps, give us some color and sense that when you sort of speak with them, what is the kind of narrative building around some of these areas? And, give us some, color there.
Yeah, so as rightly said, at India, overall about 63 million registered SMEs in India, but that includes every nook and corner of SMEs. But if you really see GST registered businesses, they are hardly about 1.2 crore businesses. And out of that, about 80 lakh businesses file their returns every month or so. And then if I look at the income tax data, the number of businesses that are filing income from business or profession, that is about 2 crore. So 20 million businesses are filing income from profession. So out of these 63 million businesses that we compare with China's 73 million, I think we are yet to catch up. There are about only 10 million GST registered businesses. which used to be only 6 million in the VAT regime, and now they are about 10 million, 12 million in the GST register, and about 20 million who are paying any kind of income taxes on their business. Now, another number, we have about 2 million companies registered in India. You know, the companies which are private limited, and LLP companies.
Sure.
As against that, in China, about 35 million companies are registered. So we have a almost 10x kind of and out of the 2 million that we have registered, only about a million or so are active. The others are not even active. So we have a much smaller market from that perspective, but we have a very long tail of very, very small businesses, micro businesses, proprietorship businesses, which are doing business at the rate of 10 lakh rupees, 20 lakh rupees, 30 lakh rupees, 50 lakh rupees in small places which are spread across all over India. The basic issue is how to get a small business a credit, a formal credit, because there is no formalization. And even if there is a formalization, suppose you want to get a loan of 1 lakh rupees or a 5 lakh rupees, there is enough paperwork to be done, and the cost of doing that paperwork and the cost of doing that appraisal of that paperwork or credit of that paperwork is not bringing down the cost of, is adding to the cost of the capital. So now, despite the fact that the repo rate is running at 4%, our interest rate for a small business is not even less than 10% even now. So there is a 6% spread between the repo rate and the business, and that too if you are approved of the credit. And most of the banks or most of the people that I have seen, even in the venture capital, you know, people are far more interested to put large chunk of money, because the cost of doing the due diligence and the cost of doing finding an entrepreneur or cost of finding a right person whom to lend or whom to fund remains more or less similar. So the issue probably here is which is going to help now is with the technological advancement that is happening. So now the entire GST data is more or less online. It is available in a single portal with Government of India. Government has also launched TRADES, which is a trade receivable invoice discounting platform. Platforms like IndiaMart, they have a lot of data of which SMEs are there. You know, this 63 million SME number that we say, the last census of SMEs was done in India, you know when? In 2006. And ever since then, last 14 years, we have been only projecting on top of that number. So the last population census was done in 2011. Last business census was done in 2006. And this 40% export figure and 45% manufacturing figure is being quoted ever since then. So what I'm saying is we need a new business census. Probably GST is a great point to start. GST has 1.2 crore registered businesses. Out of that, many of them are filing return. GST data of who are, what kind of invoicing is there. E-way bill is a very great data which is available with the government. Has to make those things available. You know, there is a new system which is being launched called account aggregation system. Because if I have to make a file of photocopies of my registration and photocopies of my bank statement and photocopies of my account statement, the amount of fudging that can happen in the bank papers and the amount of the time and money that is spent by a lender in verifying that document is way too high. If all of that can happen technologically and electronically, I think the cost of capital can reduce and the time to lending can be reduced. So I think we need to change the ways in which we can get the credit flow easier. How can we get smaller credits to be available to smaller businessmen, and how do we make even recovery better? Because the recovery cannot be that you pay a EMI at the from your account. So your entire business is running separately, and then you pay your EMI from separately. I think if we can build the recovery in the payment flow itself or in the credit flow itself, that is far more a better solution, and people are happier with that. There are a lot of new technologies coming, new ways are coming where people are able to build lending between the payment flow, lending between the transaction flow. So for example, invoice discounting is simply a lending between the payment flow or lending between the transaction flow. So if we can enable micro lending to micro enterprises based upon technology, that will reduce the spread and that will increase the overall people. I think a lot of people were started to use Aadhaar for the purpose of verification of the one individual. However, fortunately or unfortunately, because there are two sides of the coin there, privacy or I think Supreme Court denied, and then suddenly it coincided around the same time with the financial crisis of 2018. So I guess because a lot of people were able to access credit because of their Aadhaar verification, one simple verification which makes sure that you are you can enable a basic credit line to you. But currently, in the absence of that, even deciding you are you is difficult. So the banks are also, not taking risk.
Fair points. Yeah. So thank you so much, Dinesh. I think Dinesh's point is very fairly made that we need perhaps better mapping, and he added to what Vinod also mentioned, that of course, how the cost of capital can practically be lowered. And he mentioned the practical challenges that even though there's so much of paperwork required, it's almost impossible to reduce those costs of capital, and how the access to credit can be much deeper through technological intervention. So while we have these 2 points of reducing the cost of capital and how to improve access to credit, I come to you now, Nikhil. You heard from both Vinod and Dinesh. Both of them laid down the points very fairly and lucidly on what really the problems are. And Dinesh also mentioned that, what could be the practical solution perhaps in that direction. I want to come to you, Nikhil. What do you think, and what are you hearing from some of your interactions with SMEs on what really are their practical challenges?
Again, thanks for having me on this chat, and good to hear from fellow panelists, and I completely agree with them. I think, look, I don't have as wide a view as Dinesh, but I can speak to our practical experience, right? At Hero Electronics, we are partnering and investing with deep tech businesses, and we've got 4 of them, and 3 of them today are early stage growing businesses which would qualify as SMEs. And I think we've seen the journey with them over the last 4 or 5 months of how it has evolved. So look, here's my view. I think, first of all, I think we all have to recognize this is a once in a lifetime, once in a century, choose your word, pandemic. And, there is no easy answers. It is a big hit. The government didn't make it. Nobody made it. We've got to deal with it, right? So I think it'll come with some pain. The question is, how do we minimize that pain and for the vulnerable? The problem I see in the whole thing is that even among the SMEs, in our businesses, the ones who are doing well, are strong, will get through this okay. Right? They have enough funding from investors, from banks, that they can survive this. I think the problem comes on the people who are either new or had some challenge in their model, right? And 3 months of no business, which is what we all went through, is a death knell, right? And while things have restarted now, it's not back to where it was, or it won't be in a hurry, right? Lots of practical problems. Physical sales in stores is still down. Manufacturing, while up, goes up one day, goes down the other day, depending on lockdowns. Labor's in short supply. Distribution is a challenge. Distributors want more credit. So the whole system has a lot of strain on it, right? So the problem is here to stay for a while. And my view is that it take at least 6-7 months before we can come out of this as a system, at least, right? And then the problem becomes the companies who are on sort of the early stage, growing, or in that stage, right? And I think they need help. And the government has done some good things. The additional credit to SMEs is helpful. But the problem is that while the government has the right mindset in supporting them, the banks are not necessarily translating that into reality, right? In the actual spirit. So banks are ready to give you more credit as the government backs it, but they now want to relook at you as a business. Of course, with 3 months of no revenue, your balance sheet changes. So what's happening is, in practicality, the benefits of the government is being cancelled out by this, and it's not really helping on the ground. I don't know, but others think, but that's one of the problems I'm seeing, that, and there's got to be, and I have some ideas we'll come back to later, but how the weaker one can be supported. Otherwise, we'll have a lot of these SMEs going out of business, right? And not everybody has a hero group behind them.
So we sort of heard from Nikhil here that, while there is the correct mindset from the government, perhaps there's not enough support being extended from the banks. And I think it's a sort of practical solution also there that, the balance sheet of the company sort of really changed in the 3 months. It's a chicken and egg problem, really. I sort of want to come to you now, Vinod. So we heard from all the three fellow panelists, and having enough convergence on the points of cost of capital and deepening credit. I wonder sort of what do you think? You also sort of, recently inducted in the NASSCOM as part of the Engineering Council, and you're working with all of these startups in this direction. What are you hearing from SMEs in that space?
Yeah, so thank you, Shrija and HT Mint for inviting me to this panel. So definitely access to capital is an issue, and holding SMEs and startups back in terms of realizing their full potential and growth. For SMEs, equity and debt are appropriate capital types for different uses. So one thing which is very important is that entrepreneurs should think about the right kind of capital for the right purpose. For example, IP development, funding losses in the initial stages, building the initial team are high risk and long gestation investments, and these must be funded through equity. However, working capital is a typical debt style need, and more it has a very definite payback, shorter turnaround time. But having said that, debt capital has been very hard to come by for startups, especially if they are not profitable. Getting loans for startups is extremely difficult, as all banks, they look at the balance sheet and profitability for the last 2-3 years. And because there is no profitability, which is very natural for a startup or a business which is just starting up, the banks refuse to lend. Having said that, recently there are some avenues like the SIDBI, CGT, MSC schemes that can be accessed.
Yeah.
So, and there are also new age startups like Indify, Capital Float, and these startups, they have launched revenue-based financing and invoice-based financing support, which SMEs and startups can access. And Dinesh also alluded to that. Another big issue is the cost of capital. And this can vary a lot. For subsidized schemes like the SIDBI scheme, the cost can be in low teens, but the private players, the cost can be 18% and above. So on an average, if you see, the cost of debt is pretty high. It is somewhere mid-teens or above, which, given the thin margins on which SMEs operate, is doesn't become a viable option, right? So getting loans at subsidized rates will help these entrepreneurs to focus on growth and be less worried about how they are going to service the debt. So that is something which I thought I would share. And this is what I actually gather when I work with startups and SMEs as part of my NASSCOM and TIE initiatives.
Interesting. So we heard from a very meaningful panel here, and if I were to summarize, it was like taking down mental notes of this. I think 3 or 4 key points and practical challenges sort of really emerge. One sort of what Vinod Sood referred to and just now was that, cost to capital has to be lower. At better interest rates is what we need. Nikhil alluded to the fact that, while there's a right mindset, perhaps banks need a better nudge to do that. And Dinesh sort of, very beautifully kind of demystified the number of 63 million, which is being bandied around, and how much of truth is there in that number, and said that there are perhaps practical challenges in lowering the cost of capital. Vinod, I come to you beside this conversation, and there's enough convergence on the panel to what all sort of you started with. I want to understand from that in the West, you mentioned that there are some novel or interesting ideas being toyed with in terms of lowering the cost of capital. You think some of these ideas can also be applicable to India, and what could those be?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Shrija. I mean, very interesting point shared by the other panelists. Dinesh spoke about the concept of small credit to small businesses. And then Nikhil mentioned how the government is doing the right thing in terms of the stimulus program and the guarantees for loans, but that is not really trickling through to the SME sector because the banks are not following through appropriately, right? So I want to bring up a very interesting data point that I think resonates with this situation. And again, let me just compare India both with the West, which has been very successful for a long period of time, but also with the East, where they are demonstrating how quickly a country can grow, especially with China, right? So you got to understand that in India, we just have 34 banks today that constitute more than 90% of the commercial lending in this country. And if you just compare us with China, China has 3,200 banks that constitute just 80% of their lending. 80% of their lending, 3,200 banks. And the smallest group of banks, the smallest banks in China constitute more than 5 trillion of bank lending in China, which is more than double the GDP of India. So that's just comparing India with China. Now, if you look at India at the West, the United States has 15,000 financial institutions, 15,000 banks and credit unions supporting just 300 odd million people. Why do they have that? The reason for that structure is big banks give loans to big companies and small banks give loans to small companies. Like Dinesh mentioned, we've got only 12 million registered small businesses in India. And the reason for that is, and we won't get into that, the tax policy needs a whole different discussion in itself. The reason all these businesses hide from the official structure of the system is because of the tax regimen in India, right? But coming back to lending itself, how can we expect 34 banks to satisfy the needs of 63 million small mom and pop businesses, right? So the interesting thing we see in India, we're actually going in the reverse direction. Last year, we had more than 40 banks. Now we are consolidating that to 34 banks, right? And we are holding the banks accountable for NPAs. Look at what the United States did. The United States in 2008 actually took over the NPAs of more than $3 to $4 trillion from the banks that had led into the real estate sector. And the same thing happened in Japan after the Second World War. Because after the Second World War, all Japan's debt was to companies in Manchuria, South Korea, which were part of Japan. And once the Second World War ended, all the banks were bust. But the central bank took over the debt, made the banks whole so the banks could continue lending in the system. So the point I want to make is, firstly, in India, we lack the number of financial institutions to support the large, long tail of small businesses that absolutely need the support. So where do the small businesses go today? They go to the money lenders, or they go to other financial services that cost maybe between 15 to 25% interest annually, which is ridiculous, right? So that's one key point. The other thing I would like to mention is a lack of credit guidance in India. If you look at China, which has already demonstrated the power of credit guidance after they learned about it from Japan, right? So credit guidance is simply the government saying, we are going to go after these sectors. And it doesn't really matter. We are going to support these sectors with very low interest capital. And even if these loans go bust, it's perfectly fine. So let me give you an example of something really contrarian. Let me give you an example of a negative interest loan. All right. So imagine trying to boost the seafood sector in India, and you're giving an entrepreneur a negative interest rate loan of minus 10% to purchase a deep sea fishing vessel. So 1 crore loan that is going to acquiring this vessel, they only need to repay 90 lakhs. The point I'm trying to make is that deep sea vessel is going to be contributing almost 3x its capital cost to the economy, right, in 1 year. So the economy is going to benefit as long as you stimulate sectors that need that help. And if you look at what China is doing, the future is about electronics and software. It is absolutely the future. And China looks at that Sputnik moment when Lee Sedol, the champion of the game Go, was beaten by the Google AI algorithm. They talk about that being their Sputnik moment, where now the government is investing big time into actually wanting to be the leader in the world on artificial intelligence by 2030. In India, we don't seem to have these kind of initiatives, because the point I'm trying to make is the moment you understand money creation, the focus of money creation can be directed at the economic segments that can really boost the economy for the long term. And I think by doing that, we can actually support the sectors that can address a lot of the core problems. So the fundamental problem is difficulty to access credit for the small businesses, and availability of credit. Because again, there is a misconception with the financial sector that they can only lend what they have as deposits, which is not true. So that's what I would say as a quick response.
Okay, Dinesh, I come to you. I think two sort of contrarian views that have come from Vinod here. He's talking about negative interest rates and sort of increasing the number of banks which have happened in the West. You know, someone like you who has built an organization sort of really from scratch, and you have persisted through various cycles and you've emerged sort of very strongly. I want to understand from you that the current scenario right now that we have in the economy is that banks are sort of really parking more than 6 lakh crore with the RBI. And there's a narrative being built that perhaps, you know, organizations don't need credit, despite reflecting the risk aversion amongst the banks, despite the regulator nudging them to lend. I want to understand from you, do you agree with Vinod on the novel ideas that he suggested, and what are the possible solutions here to sort of get the cost of capital down for this sector?
Yeah, I mean, there is no point disagreeing there. I think more number of institutions trying to lend is always better. But let's not only look at banks. I think we have a lot of non-banking finance corporations, lending corporations. So increasing the number would not solve the problem in my view, my personal view. Why? Because banks don't make money by parking the money into the RBI account. They only get 15 bips for parking the money in the RBI account. They make money when they lend it at 9% or 12% in the market. And when there is, so if they are parking the money in RBI, or if they are parking the money, I think that's not their business. Their business is to lend money. In fact, if you are a good lender, there will be 10 people surrounding good borrower. There will be 10 people surrounding you, and they will so if you go to trade receivable exchange, if you have a good invoice with a good supplier, people would be beating down the interest rate and going towards as low as 6% or 7% also. But if you have, so the basic issue is, how do we assess people? How do we lower the cost of doing that assessment? And I can completely understand that pre-2017, these things were not available. Every state has its own taxes system. Every bank was manual. They were not interconnected. Every transportation system was not interconnected. But now there is a centralized GST regime. There is a centralized system to generate e-way bills. You know what is, most of the banks are now having the centralized banking system. A lot of transactions, I'm not saying a very huge amount, but maybe about 5 to 10% of the transactions have moved online. So there is a good sense of my cash flows online. Digital payments have increased. A lot of trillions of dollars, millions of dollars every day move through UPI rails, IMPS rails, NEFT rails, and those. We should make credit assessment based upon those things. Currently, the banks are still using the old mechanism of credit assessment. Despite the fact that they have access to the other bank accounts. I mean, it's like this. You and me all have saving banks with the bank. Even if I apply to my own bank, I have to apply for a credit card separately. Why do? If my bank account is with them, if my salary account is with them, why do I need a separate application to fill again? They know everything about me anyway. And most of the time now the KYC is also, because all the bank's accounts are mostly seeded with the Aadhaar now. So they can very well connect all those dots. You don't need to go to a credit bureau like the private credit bureau. So I'm eagerly waiting for the RBI credit bureau, which is called the public credit bureau, which comes, and the account aggregation system, where there is a seamless flow. And if the government opens up the GST data, or the at least the statistical GST data, not opens up to everybody else, at least to me itself. Can I, on a click of a button, generate my own credit application, and on a click of a button, can I transmit that to the 10 different lenders so that they can evaluate and give me an offer automatically based upon machine learning algorithms. A lot of this we are able to do at IndiaMart. So at IndiaMart, we know based upon a past usage of the particular SME, how whether a fraud is likely to happen with him or not, whether he is going to be a more credit-worthy person or not. So I think the credit evaluation mechanism, one, they have to be broadened. Two, the credit evaluation mechanism has to go away from a people. Let the machine be able to decide credit, not the people. Yesterday I was watching this movie called Love Per Square Foot, and somebody said, "Koi karamchari mera home loan nahi decide karega." So, karamchari has its own limitation. He cannot look at so many papers. He cannot connect the dots. That okay, this is the so that's why they finally boil down to, sir, आपके पास गिरवी रखने को क्या है? What is it that you can hypothecate? And that's where the problem is. So if I can give loan to you, in US when I was there 30 years ago, the applications would come to me in the mail that you just accept this. In fact, the whole credit card will come in the mail. Printed credit card by my name. You start using it and it becomes yours. I think we need to go to that level of automation. Currently the credit-based system, because it's so much of offline, and that's where the businesses are. Businesses do have cash flow. They may not have, profits, or they may not have a strong balance sheet. They may not have a very good thing, but they do have cash flows.
Yeah. So I think that is a strong sort of, assertion coming from Dinesh here that the credit assessment needs to improve. It has to sort of go beyond a very human mind to sort of, have it more AI or technology regulated. And that will sort of really deepen the credit assessment horizon that we have in our country. I think I see a lot of convergence building in this conversation. Everybody is trying to, add on to the other, which is actually very good. We are sort of getting into sort of one concluding and one conclusion here. I sort of come to you now, Nikhil. You heard from both Vinod and Dinesh here, sort of very strong assertions made here. What do you think? And I think I really sort of agree to what Dinesh said, that there's so much practical challenges to this entire conversation and how we sort of demystifying it for us bit by bit. Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think some very, very good points, right? I think if I just summarize, and I'm going to build on that, right? I think a lot of the problem is also the system, right? And this manual intervention leads to all kinds of problems and challenges we all know of. I don't want me to tell you about it. So I think in more it is technology-led, the better it is, right? And I think the large numbers, risks always can be pooled and it's been managed. It's done right. So I think a lot of the problem is in the execution, as always in India. So I think the more, all the ideas are very valid. Just to maybe build on it, I'll maybe turn this conversation a little bit, right? So I think clearly, as Vinod earlier said, it's about capital to restart, right? And banks is just one part of that. And I think I'm going to link it to another point the Honorable Prime Minister made, and they're driving it very, very rightly, of being Atmanirbhar, right? This is a time where we can restart the right way again. And I'll speak to the industry I operate in, which is technology and electronics, right? And you mentioned China earlier. There's a huge need for us to be independent and build our own supply chains, right? Clearly, government's actually seeing a lot of energy behind it in the government right now. A lot of things are happening. We are going to get, I think, a lot of manufacturing in India, which is great because it creates a lot of jobs. But long term, we also need a lot of indigenous product companies. We have to need our own companies building products, being global leaders, right? For that, we need capital. And I think while I'm a full believer in free markets, and you should believe that, Vinod's earlier point, equity should come to the strongest, but there's also a risk appetite problem in India. VCs also go after the safest, well and tried models, right? I think the government can help by creating capital pools to incent product businesses, right? And there can be all kinds of capital pools, either direct investments, R&D grants, lower credit, right? There are things where I don't think capital market will do. It has people like us who believe in it, and the government can really help us or others directly, right? I think that's also a large part of this is alternate sources of capital beyond the bank. which is investments, grants, or it is low capital interest rate funds to really build product businesses from here. That's the way we're going to be Atmanirbhar in the long term and restart right. I don't know what others think, but that's sort of my view.
Okay. Vinod, so I come to you now. Nikhil made this point that while it's good to have this campaign and narrative building around Atmanirbharta and self-reliance, it has to be equally supported by capital, and perhaps there's need for more deepening of alternate sources of capital, going beyond the banks. I come to you now, Vinod, and then we sort of get the last leg of our conversation around solutions building and where do we get from here. But before I get to that, what is your sense?
So yeah, taking off from where Nikhil left, I think what is very important is that startups, they need to be underwritten very differently from traditional companies, as they carry very different kinds of risks. And this calls for innovation both in credit and pricing. And as Nikhil mentioned, right, for supporting the product companies, supporting Atmanirbhar Bharat, right, there can be many schemes, right, where equity support can be given to very innovative startups. On the credit side, mechanisms like revenue-based financing and bill discounting can help bring more certainty to repayment and hence lower the risk. And this is what Dinesh also mentioned. On the pricing front, equity warrants have been used in a very innovative way in venture debt structures. Other upside capture structures may provide the necessary incentive for banks to lend to startups and create a buffer to tolerate more losses. So again, there can be some innovation around these structures. So I think to have more accessibility to loans, the banks also need to be more pragmatic and take a little more risk and try to fund companies in their initial years and also during the difficult times, the times we are going through. And as all other panelists also alluded to, processing of loans can be expedited. So as you see, recently the government announced this 3 lakh crore loans to be guaranteed by the government. And I've heard that there has been some very good offtake and banks are willing to lend given that the government is going to back in case of default. So such schemes, I think, need to continue and should not be just for taking care of a pandemic, but supporting some good SMEs and startups. There can be some kind of a subsidized mechanism whereby the government, in terms of if the business fails because of the risk inherent in the business, the government should be able to support that. Yeah. So these are some of the things which can be done, I believe.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of a very overpowering sort of consensus sort of building in that, banks need to step out from their zone of having risk aversion, become more pragmatic and practical, and perhaps, be sort of a little more lenient, if I were to use this word, towards startups or SMEs, because they require different kind of risk assessment. I come to you now, Dinesh. This is our last leg of our conversation. And if you were to sort of come up with some bit of manifesto or solutions, you have been giving up some ideas on how to sort of improvise on the challenges outlined by the fellow panelists. 2 key sharp recommendations coming from you, and then I will open it up to the larger group as the last leg of the conversation on the India restart for SMEs. Yeah.
See, there is, it is a complex question that I can give you 2 answers, but let me try anyway based upon whatever I have seen working with SMEs over the last 25 years. Every time there is some kind of a ease of doing business step is taken care. The business actually goes through the roof. So whether when we opened this borderless GST, it actually went through the roof. But then when we applied the e-way bill as a concept is not bad, but I think the actual implementation can be improved multifold. Similarly, when the GST was applied as a spirit of the law, it is very good. But I guess the actual implementation, actual UI, UX, actual number of times that I need to do the reworking, that goes high. As I said, there are only 2 crore businesses which are filing for income tax return, and there are only 1 crore odd businesses which are filing indirect tax return as part of GST. Now that leaves a large portion of the businesses which are not in the formal economy. And why they are not in the formal economy? Not because they are too small, because they find it too difficult. And it's a vicious circle, because they find it too difficult. They don't have digital records of the business. They do not have get the credit, because I don't agree with the fact that banks need to open up their strings. Banks are more than happy if you go and ask them 10 crore rupees or 100 crore rupees. Banks are very get irritated when you go and ask them 1 lakh rupees or 10 lakh rupees. So banks are more than happy to give you loan. They are in the business of giving loan. They don't have any problem in giving loan. So I think what government should do, focus on ease of doing business, focus on making sure that the businesses are, and focus on ease of doing employment, because a lot of employment items, for example, as soon as you employ like 10 people, suddenly there are too many regulations that start to become applicable. Because if the small business remains small, you will never get them formalized. A small business has to become a registered business and a medium business, and that's how they will employ more people. And as soon as I become more than 10 people, I have to go and register with ESI. There was a proposal by the government when it came into power in 2015 that they will scrape ESI, and they will make it equivalent to the health insurance, private health insurance. Because I don't want to deal with, just like you can opt for a provident fund or you can opt for NPS. Similarly, you should be, ESI is nothing but a health insurance. Why am I forced to take a health insurance from a state company? Can't I choose a private company? Why is there no multiple alternative which is available? Similarly, most of the technology intervention that can be done, I think with the Aadhaar seeding and with the UPI, a lot has been done. I think if we can get all of these together and make it easier for people to do business, it would be a lot more better for banking and everything else. But for the current pandemic, because the situation has suddenly gone bad, I think government needs to dole out more, at least use this as an opportunity to cut the red tape in so many of such schemes. Because this is an opportunity at that point of time. Nobody can say, because whatever is in the benefit of business and benefit of employment, that can be happening at this point of time quickly. The government should not let this crisis go waste and use this crisis to simplify the business operations as far as possible. Simplify it for the labor, simplify it for the small businesses, simplify it and force the, and I think these are the best time to do the innovations around technology and around everything, because there is a need. You have seen how we have responded, how we were able to do the lockdown, how we were able to open the lockdown, and all that happened in the 24 hours time period. Very unlike government. I think we are proud of the way the government has moved. I think that is the spirit is needed to make sure that business becomes easier when we open up.
Okay. So I think 2 or 3 key strong points coming from Dinesh here, that there has to be ease of doing business, and there also has to be ease of doing employment. There should be incentives given to startups and MSMEs to actually become more formalized. And the last point really is that a good leader should not waste a good crisis and turn it into an opportunity. I come to you now, Vinod. We heard Dinesh what he said. Any sort of points from your end, especially on the constructive lending bit, perhaps for this space?
Right. Yeah. So I think a very interesting point shared by the other panelists. What I would say is my assessment, just comparing what we are seeing in India with what we are doing actively in the West, is a foundational lack of understanding of money creation. right? I think what needs to happen is the government and the Reserve Bank of India needs to think like a venture capitalist. A venture capitalist or VC is expecting one of the 10 companies that they invest in to generate a return. In India, we seem to be obsessed about non-performing assets, right? The fact of the matter is you are going to have a significant number of businesses who are going to turn non-performing, especially with the high rate of capital in India, which I think just defeats the purpose to start with. Again, I've seen a lot of discussion in the media about the 6 lakhs crores parked by the RBI, by the banks in the RBI. Again, I would say that there is no relevance to that because that 6 lakhs crore is public deposits. What we need to understand is that forget about that 6 lakhs crores, just the top 10 banks in India have a lending capacity exceeding 10 lakh crores today if you look at their capital reserve requirements, based on their numbers. So I think there's a lack of understanding. There's a lack of competition in the financial sector, to be honest. I gave you those statistics, right? I mean, there's a 100x difference. And again, if you look at the numbers, it proves it. If you look at China created 100 times the money they had in 1990. India has created only 15 times the money. So that's one thing to understand. And I want to just share one perspective. If you look at what the West is doing with this COVID-19 crisis, right? If you compare what India is doing and compare what the West is doing, in the United States, they came out with this stimulus program where they said any business, any small business up to 500 employees in size can apply for what is called a Paycheck Protection Program loan. Officially, it's a loan provided through the lending institutions. But if that money that is lent is used for the purpose of meeting payroll requirements and salary requirements, the companies can provide that paperwork back to the lending institutions and have those loans forgiven. So for practical purposes, it's free money. Right? And that sounds so contrarian to how we think in India, because in India, there is nothing in the stimulus program that actually constitutes real support on the ground. So I think there's a lack of understanding of money creation and the lack of understanding of money creation and its impact on inflation. So even when we talk about the concerns around inflation, the solutions that we seem to think about don't align with actually what the problem is. Because we are now making it more expensive for business, and business is what creates the products and services that all of us consume. We have to be supportive of businesses. And my whole point there is, if we really start thinking about money creation in the SME sector, understanding that there are going to be NPAs, and those NPAs can be addressed through guarantees provided by the government, where the government can buy out those NPAs as long as the loans were dispersed for the correct purposes, we will see a dramatic change in India. In terms of growth, and I think my question would be, going back to the basics. Why are we struggling with the basics here in terms of the lack of understanding, and then why are we not doing what seems very obvious? Why are we not growing our financial lending sector versus actually constricting it? I think that's a foundational problem.
Okay.
So that's my perspective, Shrija. Yeah.
Okay. So I think we sort of heard from Vinod, and he has sort of picked up on some contrarian line of thinking here as to what he has seen in the West. And I think he also gave a solution as to, this paycheck protection program, which has worked well for the sector there. I come to you now, Nikhil, and then to Vinod Soodhvi. You heard from both Dinesh and Vinod, one quick solution or, recommendation to the government for the fueling of this sector, the money creation in this sector, and what could that really be?
So I think let me just step back, and I think a lot of the good points have been addressed already, I think. But if you look at it, right, I fundamentally believe in the entrepreneurial spirit in India. We're very lucky to have that ecosystem. While maybe China has more companies, but if you look at the world map today, right, we're one of the few places, the biggest startup hubs, the biggest SME pool, right? I think there are a lot of most people are honest, they want to work hard, they want to create value. I think we need the mindset to support the weak right now, and then work with earlier we said, the government needs to nudge the banks to do the right thing, let them get through this crisis, cut the red tape, let them run. I think we have enough entrepreneurial spirit in this country to deliver. I think if I have to add one more recommendation to that is going to be, look, there are some sectors where it's maybe selfish, but I think it's broadly, where we need to be Atmanirbhar, right? Defense, with electronics, others. There we need to have much more focused effort. So I think while 1% interest rate may not be possible for everyone, but there may be 4 or 5 sectors the government believes where we have to build them up, right? Take position on the global stage. There need to be more focused programs, and I think they're obviously going to talk more about what they are, but there needs to be a focus on those for sure.
Okay. So Nikhil is sort of making a point of having a more focused approach towards certain sectors. I come to you now, Vinod, soon, and we'll open the ground to the rapid fire then. Yeah.
Okay, so since I come from the tech background, I strongly believe that technology can play a very critical role in both increasing accessibility as well as reducing the cost of providing capital. And my panelists also talked about this. Data analytics, AI and machine learning can be used to do risk assessment, which can help in reducing the time to clear loans as well as also reduce the overhead cost. Okay, digital banks and financial institutions can increase reach and make sure that the underserved or unbanked subscribers also are catered to. And this, in fact, can take care of, instead of increasing physically the number of banks, right? Bring in technology, digitize this entire process to increase accessibility. So that is one point. The second point I want to make is all said and done, we also cannot wish away the large NPAs we have. Okay, we have almost 10% NPAs, right? And RBI says that it can go up to 14 or 15%, right? So which is a very, very worrying scenario, right? So what for sure needs to be done is that this entire system, the banking system, has to be strengthened. And I think, again, a contrarian point of view, instead of saying that there is a lack of understanding of money creation, I think there is a question of trust and transparency, right? So businesses, entrepreneurs, they also need to be honest in terms of discharging their obligation towards the banks, right? They need to build transparency so that the banks also are comfortable in lending. And we all know that, yeah, uh, there are issues, right? There are businesses, there are folks who try to work on the gray areas and beat the system. Okay, so all these elements, right, who make up this ecosystem, they need to mutually work together to build that trust. And that is, I think, something which also will help in strengthening this entire SME and startup ecosystem.
Sure. That's sort of very well put and very well summarized. I think sort of encapsulated everybody's points well. I will sort of get to the rapid fire now, and I'll begin with you, Vinod. What has been your experience on productivity enhancement during lockdown? True or false?
Oh, absolutely true. In our case, being a software company, I would say we've been seeing at least a 20 to 30% increase in productivity. We also have a construction business there. Of course, we are down to zero because there's no work being done. But I think in the businesses where you can work remotely, it has been a productivity boost. We are not going to go back to the old normal.
Okay, not going back to the old normal. Nikhil, what book are you reading these days?
I used to read a lot. He says I'm not reading anymore. What I'm actually doing is spending more time with my son, being at home. This is an amazing thing, right? But now, believe it or not, I'm not reading anymore. I probably should.
Let me ask you, what are you Netflixing these days?
I just finished this show. Yeah, the name's coming off me. The show about what if Nazis won the war in the US. It's a very interesting show how the alternate world will look like.
Okay.
I just finished it late last night.
Okay. Vinod Sood, I want to ask you, if this world were a billboard, what would you write on it?
That we have tremendous talent and potential, and it is up to us to how to unleash that potential. I think we have comparisons with China, but I think if we can somehow unleash the underlying potential and the passion which our youngsters have, I think we can beat China any day.
Okay. Dinesh, last word. What has Dinesh Agrawal really learned during the lockdown? One skill set that you have acquired?
I think I've started sitting a lot. I never used to sit even in the office, even in the meeting room. I loved my whiteboard and pen. Suddenly I'm all hands down, glued to my computer. So I think I've loved I've learned to listen now, because it was far more easier to be a speaker all the time when you have people around you in physical meetings. However, doing meetings on the video, uh, you realize how much you are missing when you don't let others speak. I think that big learning has come in, where I am able to listen to other people fully, because it doesn't allow you to cut them in between. And if five people start to speak, just like the TV channels of India today, now you can't even understand what's going on, who's speaking what.
Yeah.
So I guess when you are on a remote working, you can't fight like the same when you are in the same room.
Okay, my last question, that's sort of beautifully put. Really, that, the most humbling experience for you, for 2020, how will 2020 go down in your memory or history? I mean, you have seen sort of various crises, right, in the past also. And perhaps if others also want to contribute to that, that's maybe like a beautiful ending, like one word or one line that comes to your mind.
Was that for me, Srija?
I'll start with Dinesh and then get on
Oh,
to you.
sorry. Yeah.
So I think all said and done, we should thank God that we are all saved better than the rest of the world. We are, whatever said and done, I mean, we are hoping that we would not even cross, you know, 5 figure. I was hoping that we'll be less than 9,999, but looks like that ain't happening. But in a country like this, and we have lost a lot of employment, so I think everybody has become far more tolerant, far more. I think people in our day-to-day lives, we never realized, we had forgotten that we live in a very different world. Somebody is too rich and somebody is too poor, and that's how it used to work. We never realized what's their plight. I think a lot of people have opened up. A lot of people have opened up. I think this will lay the foundation, and I hope so that this lays the foundation of a more equal world, more equality in the world, more towards
Great.
the nature, more.
Okay. A more equal world. Vinod, one sentence, from the pandemic, the most humbling experience.
I think being in India, just watching poverty rise and people starving at this stage in the world has been very shaking to observe. So I would just put my label on universal basic income. I think, again, it's a misunderstood aspect of how the system works. If we just put basic income in the hands of the fringes and allow them to survive, it's going to stimulate entrepreneurship. It's going to stimulate all kinds of positive action in the country. So that's what I would say, and something that needs to be looked at very seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, Vinod, Sue, do you want to add to that?
So yeah, I think I agree. Disparity and that we are very, very vulnerable.
Okay, Nikhil.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing, but maybe the reverse. I think the biggest humbling and the biggest realization is that I think I speak for all of us. We're very lucky. I think our biggest problems right now are we are productivity. We're stuck in our home. We're on vacations. But seeing people, the kind of misery people went through, right? I think we have no right to complain. As long as we finish this year healthy, we should be. I think we are very lucky, and I think we should all do our best to help people. This is tough times for people at the bottom of the pyramid. Very tough times for them.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's true. Very lucky and very blessed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. I think for your time and energy into this. I think we had a very beautiful conversation here, unraveling various aspects on SMEs, but also very good to know into the minds of each one of you how you're thinking about the lockdown and how it has made a better version of each one of you and the world in general. Till the time we see you next, goodbye and good luck. And here's wishing you and yours a very safe and healthy environment. Thank you.
You've been a great host.
Thank you.
Thank you, Srija.
Thank you, Shrija.
Thank
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.